Welcome back to New Day. About 2 in every 100 children born in the U.S. are conceived through IVF. It's a process by which eggs are retrieved from a woman's ovaries and are combined with sperm in a lab. Once fertilized, some of those eggs develop into embryos that can be transferred into a woman's uterus. At the moment, IVF is not affected by the reversal of Roe v. Wade. However, there is concern among some that personhood bills will be next to follow. That's the belief that embryos have the same rights and legal status as a live human being, and that could make fertility treatments like IVF illegal. Here's more of my conversation with Seattle fertility doctor Lora Shahine.
Specifically for IVF, I don't think what people realize is that a lot of these personhood bills, which are not law yet, but a lot of the personhood bills that could trigger and are planning to trigger in the wake of overturning Roe v. Wade, has a lot of language that protects life at all stages, or at any stage, or at fertilization. And if you give rights to embryos, that could be interpreted to dramatically change how I help people build families with IVF.
Could you kind of explain how that is? I mean, are we talking about like at fertilization when it's, I would say, in a clinical stage and not in a human body?
Correct. So the way IVF works is IVF, in vitro fertilization. That means in a lab. So you're fertilizing eggs and sperm outside of the body. And then when you've got the embryo, that's when you put it into the uterus to implant and be pregnant. Okay. But if you give rights to an embryo, and someone could interpret a lot of the things that we do to take care of embryos as harming the embryo, then you could dramatically change how we practice. You could say that freezing embryos is harmful to the embryo. You could say genetic testing of embryos for diseases like cystic fibrosis or chromosome issues that lead to miscarriage, because the way that we test is we actually biopsy cells. So if you're saying that that is harming an embryo, then someone could say, you know, that we shouldn't do that.
What are some of the other limits that could happen and affect couples?
Right. Another thing is disposition of embryos. So I don't think people realize how inefficient human reproduction is, like how many eggs and sperm it takes to actually make a baby. And I know that sounds weird because everything should be precious, but it might take someone who's 40 years old, 20, 25 eggs to actually have a baby, because not every egg will fertilize, not every fertilized egg will continue to develop, and certainly not every embryo is perfect. So the way that we practice IVF has made it incredibly likely that someone could get pregnant the very first time they do an embryo transfer. IVF is more successful now than ever before, but if you change the way that we practice, people might have to do a lot more egg retrievals, a lot more, care, and just really unnecessary. All maybe with the moral feeling that they're trying to protect life. And it's hard to argue against that. And I want to try to understand everybody where they're coming from. But that's why I'm trying to educate that these things have other impacts that people might not have thought of yet.
You know, Washington State, it doesn't look like anything is going to change with our laws that protect these personhood rights, as you put it. So are you concerned about it being at risk in Washington, or are you just worried about the country as a whole, the states that are overturning these rights?
I am so grateful to live and practice in Washington State, and with a current administration that has outright said they want to protect reproductive rights, which includes, helping people build families. So that's very fortunate. But to sit in a little bubble and think that what is happening with the rest of the country doesn't impact us, that just doesn't make sense. Long-term impact to limiting decisions between doctors and patients, whether it's IVF or whether it's caring for someone in early pregnancy, that has so many long-term impacts by increasing costs of IVF. People might have to travel to different states in order to do the things like genetic testing on embryos. And it can increase costs and decrease access. So, in something that is already strained and is not universally covered and is already extremely expensive for too many people, we're just going to make that worse if this happens.
And thanks to Dr. Lora Shahine for sharing that with us.